So if you look at our country and the landscape, the reality and what the imperative is the following. We have several segments and verticals that are still not completely technology driven, and we have an opportunity to leapfrog that. A good example could be agriculture. There could be healthcare that goes to the masses at the remotest place. The second thing is AI, in some sense, it's still in pockets in urban cities, in tier 1 places, whereas the applications and the value of AI truly in the remotest part is another place where we can go impact, which is the reach. The third one absolutely is the cost of ownership. One of the things that we'd always like to say is, if you have to bring AI everywhere, it has to be affordable. And affordability is a very relative term. What's affordable for one may not be affordable for another one. And in terms of that, trying to give that capability to pick and choose what platform you want to run your AI application becomes very important. So the cost of ownership is critical as we bring AI. And the last but not the least is innovation. When we are talking innovation, we are talking about innovation that is at the population scale. It's not about 10,000 people using it or 1 million people using it. We are talking about hundreds of millions, and we are talking about 1 billion population. Now this inequity in technology being used across verticals, the demographic challenges, the cost and the infrastructure makes it a fantastic problem statement for technology companies, as well as working in partnership with the government, university and private sector to bring what we call as AI reach for the billion population that we have in India. Now, one of the key things that Intel looks at is for us to achieve and be able to get that reach and that affordable AI, we have 4 tenets that are important. One is heterogeneous scalable compute, which means you need compute that is not a one-size-fits-all, that can be of various sizes. It's just like how you get on the road. You don't find on the road, on the highway, only Ferraris running. You got cars of various sizes, different engine capacity, based on what the person wants to do, where they want to go, and what kind of traffic they want to really take inside the vehicle. Similarly, the heterogeneous scalable compute is what Intel focuses on, whereby you can run AI on a variety of different platforms based on the right workload. The next one is secure, as well as network independent. Being able to run on the edge, being able to run on a platform such that even if you don't have the network, you're still able to run the AI applications. Open ecosystem, open software with AI is another important aspect. And last but not the least, this is not something Intel can do by itself. It will co-innovate with our partners, and one of our biggest partnerships has been with Bhashini as well in terms of how we have collaborated. But that aside, India also brings a wealth of different independent software vendors, startups, universities, academia that are all working on AI, being able to do that in partnership. Now, what does affordable AI really mean and what that vision really looks like? And I've called out some verticals and some examples. It ranges from education, where it can be personalized, different vernacular, make it very interactive. It could be in retail, where we are empowering the micro entrepreneurs to small and medium business, where they can use AI in a way that they can compete with the rest of the world, also sell their products globally. The other aspect is healthcare. This is not just talking about the large hospitals, but also being able to take healthcare down to the grassroots level to be able to achieve basic health as well as do advanced healthcare. Public services, infrastructure, be it transportation, be it looking at climate, landslides, flood warning, places like that. Agriculture, where precision farming can really help the marginalized farmers. And last but not the least, AI can be a great power for us to amplify the cultural attributes that India brings. And so these are some examples of verticals where we can take affordable AI forward. Now a good segue into that is what Intel has done with Bhashini. We have collaborated with Bhashini to bring both real-time translation and transcription, which is so valuable for students, productivity tools, even for small businesses, enterprises, and we have now have that working on our Core Ultra series which is the AIPC. So without the network, you can have Bhashni, the language translation, both the ASR, the Indic language, transcription to 22 languages, all available on an AIPC, and you will see that demo. Just to extend that, even global content, like Andrew here talking about some of the AI courses, and he's one of those who's been teaching a lot about AI globally. For us to be able to take content like that and have it available in different Indian languages and have our students, our professionals to have access to it is something that we have accomplished with Bhashini. So that's another prototype that you will see. Now, as I wrap this up, we want to build a future where AI works for every Indian. It does not matter where they are located. When it works, it just works not because you have connectivity, even if you don't have connectivity. Not because you can buy something very expensive. You should be able to get those platforms and solutions in a very affordable way. And not because where you live. You may be living in a city, you may be living in a tier 2 place or in a village or any remote place. That's when AI really works for every Indian. And that's our goal, and our collaboration with Bhashini has been one of those examples. And we'd like to further take that in a way that we can go meet some of the vision that we have put forth jointly together. Thank you.
So now I would like to call Ms. Shweta Khurana to share her insights.
Good morning, everyone. What Gokul spoke about is the power of what happens when you actually put an AIPC and all the associated tools which can help in real-time translation in the hands of a student. What I'm trying to do is paint a picture of how this would translate in our schools. So let me share, and while I'm talking, what you'll be seeing at the background are snapshots. These are snapshots of AI labs across our country, across India. It's interesting to note that what is really happening here. You see students in schools and colleges learning about artificial intelligence and how to apply it, to create solutions, to innovate, to really solve the problems or challenges they see around themselves, their communities, their institutions. Now, most of these labs have 3 corners. So the first corner is a learning corner, which typically a student where they would learn the skills which are required would pick up those skills from. And you would have an access to a plethora of devices in this corner. The second corner is a development corner, and the third corner is the inferencing corner. So in these corners, there has been given an access to AI-BC. And when we ask the students who've been operating in these labs, what's the biggest challenge which you see today? What is it which would not enable you to go find a problem and try and use all the skills that you have to go solve it? The first challenge which they came up with was connectivity. In fact, many of these labs which are in far-flung areas, they said, I'm actually using my parents' handheld device to transfer the internet from there, and he yells at me because I end up consuming all the bandwidth. So lack of connectivity was the biggest challenge which enabled, or in fact, which kind of deterred them from really creating the knowledge. Now, with an AIPC and with a whole environment of Bhashini loaded onto it, we actually end up solving that challenge. Then we spoke to a couple of other students and we said, help us understand what is it that we can do to enable you to become an innovator in this space. And they came up with a lot of recommendations, but the one that stood out personally to me was access to tool sets. And this collaboration which we are doing with Bhashini today will really enable the access to those tool sets and give those tool sets in the hands of the local innovators who can then go and become knowledge creators of artificial intelligence instead of being just consumers of whatever they see in a language which is foreign to them. So just wanted to share this thought of how the application would result into real-time impact on the ground in the education environment. Thank you so much.
Now, I would like to call Mr. Kushal Pathak to specially address the audience with the insights.
Little mic you have? No.
caller. Dear Bhashini and the Intel team, good to hear the work which you have been doing right now in terms of language translation and education. And thank you, Bhashini team, for inviting me today to share my thoughts. And I was told that this 10 minutes I had to speak extempore. So to speak extempore, I decided to tell you a story. While I was working in Rural Development Ministry once upon a time, one of my colleagues was sent for an inquiry. One of my colleagues was sent for an inquiry for embezzlement of money. So I wanted to augment my mic system because the sound is buzz here. So I was telling you a story that in rural development, one of my colleagues was sent for an inquiry to find out a bridge which was supposedly constructed under Manrega scheme. And the complaint was there was no bridge which was constructed. So my friend, he went and saw the bridge and saw the record. Everything was spick and clean. The bridge was there, the record was clean. So the complaint didn't lie, and my friend was very good, by the way. But his hunch feeling said that this bridge is not made in a day. Like the Rome was not built in a day, the bridge was considered not made by the Manrega worker. It had a lot of architecture issues, which was only possible in the colonial era. So his hunch feeling was that this bridge was constructed way back, not by the poor Manrega worker. To establish this fact, he went department to department, ministry to ministry to actually find out where the record exists. He couldn't find any record. Till last when I met him, he's still struggling to find the real answer why he was not able to get the answer to where and how the bridge was made by poor women who were working in Manrega. The real issue is not this, that the bridge was there, the work was done, and there was no record. The issue is
desktop paint all.
It's all there. ये ना
नहीं वो तो मैं पीपीटी मैं रन करूँगा.
हाँ बट तो मेरे को पीडीएफ भेजा ना.
इट्स ओके.
ओके सो जस्ट कनेक्ट करना.
अरे
ये मेरा
गिव मी दैट.
ये रहा.
पीपीटी हो गया.
यार दिस इज योर्स.
नो नॉट दिस वन. अभी दिस आई विल यूज इट आफ्टरवर्ड्स. अभी वो एक बैकग्राउंड वाला है ना.
हाँ हाँ वो भी है.
हाँ वो दोनों भी आप सब डाउनलोड कर दो.
एक ही फोल्डर में वो भी रहा. पैनल बैकग्राउंड.
या एक पावरिंग इंडिया एआई वो कौन सा है?
वो तुम्हारा ही है.
दिखाइए. प्रेजेंटेशन. उसके बाद नेक्स्ट वन
एक और वो मेरा है बस. और एक सेव करना है क्या?
हाँ ये वाला. व्हेन द पैनल स्टार्ट्स देन आई विल पुट दिस एज ए बैकग्राउंड.
अच्छा. ठीक है, 2 ही है ना, ठीक है।
So अभी वो वाला डाल करके छोड़ दो,
ठीक है।
till 11:30. Not this. हाँ,
ये वाला ना,
हाँ.
ओके। तो डालेगा वो हिल स्विच। इसको भी यहाँ आने का,
किसको?
ये पिक्चर वहाँ आने का,
मुझे नहीं पता सर, मैं क्या
बुला लो उनको। हाँ,
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة ولهم عذاب عظيم. ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون. في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون. وإذا قيل لهم لا تفسدوا في الأرض قالوا إنما نحن مصلحون. ألا إنهم هم المفسدون ولكن لا يشعرون. وإذا قيل لهم آمنوا كما آمن الناس قالوا أنؤمن كما آمن السفهاء. ألا إنهم هم السفهاء ولكن لا يعلمون. وإذا لقوا الذين آمنوا قالوا آمنا وإذا خلوا إلى شياطينهم قالوا إنا معكم إنما نحن مستهزئون الله يستهزئ بهم ويمدهم في طغيانهم يعمهون أولئك الذين اشتروا الضلالة بالهدى فما ربحت تجارتهم وما كانوا مهتدين مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله بنورهم وتركهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون صم بكم عمي فهم لا يرجعون أو كصيب من السماء فيه ظلمات ورعد وبرق يجعلون أصابعهم في آذانهم من الصواعق حذر الموت والله محيط بالكافرين يكاد البرق يخطف أبصارهم كلما أضاء لهم مشوا فيه وإذا أظلم عليهم قاموا ولو شاء الله لذهب بسمعهم وأبصارهم إن الله على كل شيء قدير يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون الذي جعل لكم الأرض فراشا والسماء بناء وأنزل من السماء ماء فأخرج به من الثمرات رزقا لكم فلا تجعلوا لله أندادا وأنتم تعلمون وإن كنتم في ريب مما نزلنا على عبدنا فأتوا بسورة من مثله ودعوا شهداءكم من دون الله إن كنتم صادقين فإن لم تفعلوا ولن تفعلوا فاتقوا النار التي وقودها الناس والحجارة أعدت للكافرين وبشر الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أن لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار كلما رزقوا منها من ثمرة رزقا قالوا هذا الذي رزقنا من قبل وأتوا به متشابها ولهم فيها أزواج مطهرة وهم فيها خالدون إن الله لا يستحيي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعوضة فما فوقها فأما الذين آمنوا فيعلمون أنه الحق من ربهم وأما الذين كفروا فيقولون ماذا أراد الله بهذا مثلا يضل به كثيرا ويهدي به كثيرا وما يضل به إلا الفاسقين الذين ينقضون عهد الله من بعد ميثاقه ويقطعون ما أمر الله به أن يوصل ويفسدون في الأرض أولئك هم الخاسرون كيف تكفرون بالله وكنتم أمواتا فأحياكم ثم يميتكم ثم يحييكم ثم إليه ترجعون هو الذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا ثم استوى إلى السماء فسواهن 7 سماوات وهو بكل شيء عليم. وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها ثم عرضهم على الملائكة فقال أنبئوني بأسماء هؤلاء إن كنتم صادقين. قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. قال يا آدم أنبئهم بأسمائهم فلما أنبأهم بأسمائهم قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض وأعلم ما تبدون وما كنتم تكتمون. وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس أبى واستكبر وكان من الكافرين. وقلنا يا آدم اسكن أنت وزوجك الجنة وكلا منها رغدا حيث شئتما ولا تقربا هذه الشجرة فتكونا من الظالمين. فأزلهما الشيطان عنها فأخرجهما مما كانا فيه وقلنا اهبطوا بعضكم لبعض عدو ولكم في الأرض مستقر ومتاع إلى حين. فتلقى آدم من ربه كلمات فتاب عليه إنه هو التواب الرحيم. قلنا اهبطوا منها جميعا فإما يأتينكم مني هدى فمن تبع هداي فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. والذين كفروا وكذبوا بآياتنا أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأوفوا بعهدي أوف بعهدكم وإياي فارهبون. وآمنوا بما أنزلت مصدقا لما معكم ولا تكونوا أول كافر به ولا تشتروا بآياتي ثمنا قليلا وإياي فاتقون. ولا تلبسوا الحق بالباطل وتكتموا الحق وأنتم تعلمون. وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واركعوا مع الراكعين. أتأمرون الناس بالبر وتنسون أنفسكم وأنتم تتلون الكتاب أفلا تعقلون. واستعينوا بالصبر والصلاة وإنها لكبيرة إلا على الخاشعين الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقو ربهم وأنهم إليه راجعون. يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأني فضلتكم على العالمين. واتقوا يوما لا تجزي نفس عن نفس شيئا ولا يقبل منها شفاعة ولا يؤخذ منها عدل ولا هم ينصرون. وإذ نجيناكم من آل فرعون يسومونكم سوء العذاب يذبحون أبناءكم ويستحيون نساءكم وفي ذلكم بلاء من ربكم عظيم. وإذ فرقنا بكم البحر فأنجيناكم وأغرقنا آل فرعون وأنتم تنظرون. وإذ واعدنا موسى 40 ليلة ثم اتخذتم العجل من بعده وأنتم ظالمون ثم عفونا عنكم من بعد ذلك لعلكم تشكرون. وإذ آتينا موسى الكتاب والفرقان لعلكم تهتدون. وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم إنكم ظلمتم أنفسكم باتخاذكم العجل فتوبوا إلى بارئكم فاقتلوا أنفسكم ذلكم خير لكم عند بارئكم فتاب عليكم إنه هو التواب الرحيم. وإذ قلتم يا موسى لن نؤمن لك حتى نرى الله جهرة فأخذتكم الصاعقة وأنتم تنظرون ثم بعثناكم من بعد موتكم لعلكم تشكرون. وظللنا عليكم الغمام وأنزلنا عليكم المن والسلوى كلوا من طيبات ما رزقناكم وما ظلمونا ولكن كانوا أنفسهم يظلمون. وإذ قلنا ادخلوا هذه القرية فكلوا منها حيث شئتم رغدا وادخلوا الباب سجدا وقولوا حطة نغفر لكم خطاياكم وسنزيد المحسنين. فبدل الذين ظلموا قولا غير الذي قيل لهم فأنزلنا على الذين ظلموا رجزا من السماء بما كانوا يفسقون. وإذ استسقى موسى لقومه فقلنا اضرب بعصاك الحجر فانفجرت منه 12 عينا قد علم كل أناس مشربهم كلوا واشربوا من رزق الله ولا تعثوا في الأرض مفسدين. وإذ قلتم يا موسى لن نصبر على طعام واحد فادع لنا ربك يخرج لنا مما تنبت الأرض من بقلها وقثائها وفومها وعدسها وبصلها قال أتستبدلون الذي هو أدنى بالذي هو خير اهبطوا مصرا فإن لكم ما سألتم وضربت عليهم الذلة والمسكنة وباءوا بغضب من الله ذلك بأنهم كانوا يكفرون بآيات الله ويقتلون النبيين بغير الحق ذلك بما عصوا وكانوا يعتدون إن الذين آمنوا والذين هادوا والنصارى والصابئين من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وعمل صالحا فلهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون وإذ أخذنا ميثاقكم ورفعنا فوقكم الطور خذوا ما آتيناكم بقوة واذكروا ما فيه لعلكم تتقون ثم توليتم من بعد ذلك فلولا فضل الله عليكم ورحمته لكنتم من الخاسرين ولقد علمتم الذين اعتدوا منكم في السبت فقلنا لهم كونوا قردة خاسئين فجعلناها نكالا لما بين يديها وما خلفها وموعظة للمتقين وإذ قال موسى لقومه إن الله يأمركم أن تذبحوا بقرة قالوا أتتخذنا هزوا قال أعوذ بالله أن أكون من الجاهلين قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما هي قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة لا فارض ولا بكر عوان بين ذلك فافعلوا ما تؤمرون قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما لونها قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة صفراء فاقع لونها تسر الناظرين قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما هي إن البقرة شابه علينا وإنا إن شاء الله لمهتدون قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة لا ذلول تثير الأرض ولا تسقي الحرث مسلمة لا شية فيها قالوا الآن جئت بالحق فذبحوها وما كادوا يفعلون وإذ قتلتم نفسا فادارأتم فيها والله مخرج ما كنتم تكتمون فقلنا اضربوه ببعضها كذلك يحيي الله الموتى ويريكم آياته لعلكم تعقلون ثم قست قلوبكم من بعد ذلك فهي كالحجارة أو أشد قسوة وإن من الحجارة لما يتفجر منه الأنهار وإن منها لما يشقق فيخرج منه الماء وإن منها لما يهبط من خشية الله وما الله بغافل عما تعملون أفتطمعون أن يؤمنوا لكم وقد كان فريق منهم يسمعون كلام الله ثم يحرفونه من بعد ما عقلوه وهم يعلمون وإذا لقوا الذين آمنوا قالوا آمنا وإذا خلا بعضهم إلى بعض قالوا أتحدثونهم بما فتح الله عليكم ليحاجوكم به عند ربكم أفلا تعقلون أولا يعلمون أن الله يعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون ومنهم أميون لا يعلمون الكتاب إلا أماني وإن هم إلا يظنون فويل للذين يكتبون الكتاب بأيديهم ثم يقولون هذا من عند الله ليشتروا به ثمنا قليلا فويل لهم مما كتبت أيديهم وويل لهم مما يكسبون وقالوا لن تمسنا النار إلا أياما معدودة قل أتخذتم عند الله عهدا فلن يخلف الله عهده أم تقولون على الله ما لا تعلمون بلى من كسب سيئة وأحاطت به خطيئته فأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون والذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك أصحاب الجنة هم فيها خالدون وإذ أخذنا ميثاق بني إسرائيل لا تعبدون إلا الله وبالوالدين إحسانا وذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وقولوا للناس حسنا وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة ثم توليتم إلا قليلا منكم وأنتم معرضون وإذ أخذنا ميثاقكم لا تسفكون دماءكم ولا تخرجون أنفسكم من دياركم ثم أقررتم وأنتم تشهدون ثم أنتم هؤلاء تقتلون أنفسكم وتخرجون فريقا منكم من ديارهم تظاهرون عليهم بالإثم والعدوان وإن يأتوكم أسارى تفادوهم وهو محرم عليكم إخراجهم أفتؤمنون ببعض الكتاب وتكفرون ببعض فما جزاء من يفعل ذلك منكم إلا خزي في الحياة الدنيا ويوم القيامة يردون إلى أشد العذاب وما الله بغافل عما تعملون أولئك الذين اشتروا الحياة الدنيا بالآخرة فلا يخفف عنهم العذاب ولا هم ينصرون ولقد آتينا موسى الكتاب وقفينا من بعده بالرسل وآتينا عيسى ابن مريم البينات وأيدناه بروح القدس أفكلما جاءكم
different options around us, right from places of interest to finding cabs to finding restaurants. But can you find jobs around you as a blue dot? Can you find tourism experiences around you as a blue dot? Can you find many other aspects that are important in your life around you as a blue dot? And that's the thing that we'll speak about, that when you enable discovery to be addressed in that context, that opens up many avenues. In fact, there are pilots on this which are happening in Ghaziabad, Abhinavji is leading, likewise in Dharwad, in Ranchi, and at a few other places which will be shortly starting that. But what that is revealing is that the moment you make the youth, the people as blue dots, and you make the opportunities, be it in the context of livelihood, welfare schemes, etc., as blue dots, that's really starts changing the discovery game. And with that discovery game, a lot of aha factors come up, and we'll shortly be discussing that. So just to kick it off, Manmiji, I wanted to ask the first question to you. We, of course, talk about the aspect that India may or may not have the right capability, but is it true that we have a capabilities gap, or is it really discovery as a gap which stops us from seeing the capabilities of people, and especially with initiative that you're leading, which is around creating purple dots for people with disabilities, and almost 1 lakh plus have been created very recently. So how do you see this as a problem? I mean, is that a problem of capability, or are we really missing out on something which is pointing to the problem of discovery in the country?
Thank you, Gauravji, and a very good afternoon. I think it's not a problem of capability. India does not lack the ability. But what India lacks is the source of visibility, or basically discoverability, like you call it. We have seen through our government schemes, and this could be typical of any government scheme across different ministries. There's always a whole framework that we put in. We have a lot of standards that it matches these check boxes, and only then you are eligible for that particular scheme. And many a times, many funds remain unspent primarily because we are unable to find the exact person fitting those particular check boxes that we call as eligibility. But besides them, there's a huge cohort of people who are sitting there ready to be discovered, like you put it. And I think it's that visibility that we are looking through. And this is the time that we are need to use AI and technology in the best possible way to identify that cohort of people who may not, as like I said, fall into that framework of a government scheme, but that does not mean that they don't have the aspirations, the capabilities, the talent, the ability. That what they lack is the visibility from the government perspective, but then government is not the only provider to match their aspirations. The government can also, with the use of smart AI and technology platform, bring their aspirations to match with a set of people who are willing to contribute to that. And I think that's what the purple dot / blue dot, and today I've heard an orange dot is talking about.
Right. Orange dot, yeah, that's the new one. No, thank you for articulating that. In fact, what you're bringing out is the fact that we don't really have a problem in terms of having people with aspirations or having livelihood avenues, avenues for skilling, avenues for different types of services or welfare schemes. The real thing is to make it surfaceable, discoverable, and that's where AI, with its ability to convert intent into voice, into a signal, that really can be a game changer.
You know, we are a very aspirational country at this point of time. We talk about the democratic dividend. That dividend comes coming with a lot of hope and a lot of aspirations. And I think we need to give a voice to each one of them. And that can happen only when we open doors, windows, whether it has to be physically done or digitally done, but we need to do that.
Excellent. So AI giving voice in a way to the youth, to the women, to the aspirations of people with disabilities, and that coming out. Thank you. Abhinavji, you're really doing it on the ground, enabling this in Ghaziabad. In fact, we got to know about how in just the last couple of months, you've been able to surface so many local jobs for the local people of Ghaziabad, right? So what is this approach telling you from a practitioner's perspective as you see many local job options being made discoverable for the local youth, local women of Ghaziabad? And how do you see this moving from there?
See, when we look at the entire ecosystem of this employment, we have many stakeholders. For example, you have the employment exchange, which is having the database of all the aspirants who want to get job. Then we have the Polytechnic, ITI, Skill Development Mission, UP Skill Development Mission as a state mission, which are skilling youth in certain skills which are required in the market. Then we have the industries, which are the job providers. And all these stakeholders, they are working under different ministries, under different departments. And when we see this entire ecosystem, nobody thinks of it under one umbrella when we see it at the district level. And this is where the discovery part comes into picture and the use of AI comes into picture. Where what we did was to enable this AI-based technology or AI-based discovery, we brought all these stakeholders together under one umbrella, which was Jobs Facilitation Center, which we formed at the district level, and all these departments and all these stakeholders, they were brought together. And they were made to exchange the database, they were made to exchange the information. For example, Ghaziabad has 2.5 lakh registered MSMEs, and obviously unofficially also many more than that. So when we talk about 2.5 lakh MSMEs, that means we are as in having too many jobs. If I even average it like 5 per MSME, so you can see the numbers, which is huge. Yeah. And when we used to conduct the offline melas, numbers used to be 2,500, 3,500, 5,000 at max. At max, which we went at a CM's event was 5,000, right. Not more than that. So getting these many jobs surfaced was a task, especially having any offline setup and all these departments working separately. Right. Because whenever, just an example, for example, I used to ask these employment exchange officer, you tell me how many students you have been able to reach out, or these aspirants have been able to reach out, who will be coming to the employment mela. So the usual answer used to be, sir, 8,000, 10,000. Out of those, hardly 50-60% used to turn up at the mela. So, but when we started this blue dot, because this was the vision behind all that, so we made sure that all these GFC members, they sit together. We had multiple meetings with them, and we made sure that the district industry center, which is responsible for handling all the MSME issues, we made sure we held all the meetings with industrial associations, get all these MSMEs on this platform, ask them to create the blue dots in form of job providers on this platform. Right. Number one. That's how we created more than 10,000 jobs in last 60 days, right. Where we met almost 10 to 12 industries association, where obviously Headed High and Ekstep, both of them did really well, because Headed High team was there. Because you know that you need to really motivate the staff down, and that's why we needed the help of someone like Headed High to push it. And that's how we created 10,000 jobs. And when it came to job seekers, we were finding it difficult to register the students. For example, we also had the higher education officer in this JFC. But he or she was not able to basically generate those many numbers, because they didn't have any database of the alumni. Right. For example, because these local colleges, they don't have this concept of alumni association or even maintaining a database of those students who have already graduated, or even they don't have any idea if they're employed or not. So in that sense, that's where the AI chatbot came to the picture, and AI bot rather, calling bot. Right. And we were amazed that when we use the same database which Employment Exchange had, say 8,000 data was with the Employment Exchange, almost 24,000 ka data was with the skill development department. Right. So almost we had the data of 40,000 students or the job seekers. Right. This AI bot, what it did was it called all these students, and we were able to generate 10,000 blue dot as job seekers right. On this platform with the help of AI bot. And that is where even this was a revelation for me also. Even I never thought a calling bot can do so many things. Right. In fact, when I was discussing the same with the Adarsh ji yesterday, so he mentioned that we have a step 3 also. And I was amazed. The next step would be like the bot will be asking you, okay, what exactly do you need? As in, what skills you want to get skilled. Right. into. So then we'll be bringing in the other partners, other stakeholders of the ecosystem. For example, the staffers, the placement agencies, because these MSMEs, they always used to approach the local placement agencies to get these staffed. But now imagine all the placement agencies of Ghaziabad, or say locally, all the say Noida or Meerut. So all the placement agencies, staffing firms, skilling centers, skilling as an agencies, they all will be on the same platform, and will be will create an ecosystem which has been so dispersed at this time. So this was the experiences.
No, excellent. That's amazing. In fact, just for perspective, I also wanted to share that when you look at the conventional job platforms like Naukri, Apna, all of these, everyone put together could not even show 100 jobs in Ghaziabad. Right, and what Abhinavji is talking about, 10,000 plus jobs, and I think that came out of just 1,000 odd MSMEs that were reached out.
Yes.
Right,
yes.
so
only through associations.
Only through associations approaching them, and we are talking about 2.5 lakh MSMEs in Ghaziabad. So does India really have a jobs problem? I think the answer lies in what he's been trying, and how AI gave voice to people so that the jobs can become a blue dot, so that people can see around that, and vice versa. But Madan, now...
can I butt in before you speak with Mr. Madan? And a request to Abhinav and his entire team, and probably the Head Hill High Foundation, who's working with the Ghaziabad Authority, is that while you do this headhunting exercise for so many unemployed youths, and along with MSMEs there, I think the requirement is also to ensure that you reach out to the PWDs there, and that data can be, of course, it is already with you if you have an integration with the UDID database. You will be able to identify the PWD youth there, and when you have MSMEs there, anybody willing to take up a PWD and give them the skill sets along with whatever you need, we'll be happy to help you if you required SOPs for the hearing impaired or for the vision impaired. We have other organizations here who work in that field, like Uniki and Gopal Krishna and all the others. We'll be happy to join in this exercise. But my deep request to all of you is that when you take on the youth, don't forget the youth that are with disabilities in this entire exercise.
Excellent.
In fact, we have 15,000 specially able people registered under UDID scheme. Yes, ma'am.
So 15,000 purple dots hence can happen in Ghaziabad.
Yes, definitely, ma'am. In fact, ma'am, we did a small project with the IOCL and one of our, as an I'm from IT Madras, ma'am. As an I graduated from IT Madras, so one of my senior they have a startup. So we collaborated with NeoMotion and IOCL, and we got them placed in Zomato also. So Zomato has service delivery partners.
Zomato has 2,500 PWDs working with them.
Oh, excellent.
So these are just examples that can be emulated by MSMEs. And trust me, these people are better workers. They are more sincere. Yeah. They adapt well. But the only thing that's required is a SOP for them and on-job training, so that the attrition rate is lower. They are aware of what they are getting into.
Yeah, though that becomes important. Right. So that's an excellent point in terms of how people with disabilities can participate. And thank you, Abhinavji, for accepting that request. Madan, so Abhinavji, you have to head out, right? I know. So, but request made, request accepted. So at least that part taken care of.
Action items.
All right. So, Madan, I'll ask the question to you. Abhinavji, thank you. I think you have to leave for an important meeting, but thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye. Madan, so you've been a advocate of Blue Dots. You've been working with the ecosystem across different implementations. I just wanted to ask you, what do Blue Dots really mean to you? And what are the kind of use cases that come into your mind when you think of something like Blue Dots, especially those linked to unlocking India's demographic dividend?
Thank you, Gaurav, and fascinating to hear the comments and the thoughts. Now, I was just reflecting as I was sitting here, the discoverability, as you said, Blue Dots help discover two roommates after a long time. But I was just thinking, see, my dad used to run a travel agency. So when I was growing up, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, I used to go and do all the coordinations on phone, and somebody calls and say, cab driver has not come. Then you call that guy. By the time you call this fellow, the cab driver is somewhere else. It used to be such a nightmare trying to get the addresses going. And then came Uber many years later. It changed the whole perspective that you look at a problem and say, if you apply tech, what emerges? And I have wondered many times saying that it's such a simple idea. Why didn't it strike anybody? Right? And Uber then went on to obviously respond to many billions of dollars of the inflection point that we are at today is that the blue dot, as an example, is that it gives us, it not just gives us, it forces us to reimagine the way things work, right? And if we don't reimagine, we will be still stuck in the old world, right? So the whole concept that we've been talking about is that if you use 4 forces, and Manmeet was talking about the whole aspirations, and I truly believe that unless and until aspirations are understood and packaged and catered to, adoption won't happen. Right. So you take aspirations, you take youth power, which Head and I, we've been doing it for 15 years, and you take entrepreneurial resilience that exists in Bharat, and you take technology, you combine those 4 forces, you can create a new rural, and I call it as Ruben and therefore Rubenomics. Right. So to me, the AI part and the blue dot and the DPI is that what can you do to give the power of DPI to the power of AI to the youth? Right? Well, you said blue dots to the power of AI. I'm saying there is a youth power, add the DPI power and the AI power to it. Right. The net effect can be exponential. Right? Well, we've been discussing the blue dots on the purple dots and the orange dots. The beauty of AI is hyper-personalization. Right? Yeah. So instead of just conceptualizing blue dot today as a point in time, what if the blue dot grows in size and colors? In the journey of the youth. Right. So one of the things that we hear, and this we keep talking to our recruiters, to say from the lens of a youth, attrition is not a bug, it's a feature. Because if I'm a youth from a tier 4, tier 3 town, I've started working in a hotel, I don't like it, I'll quit it and try something else till I settle down. Right? So how do you make that feature better? That how do you help youth career discover what they're good at? Do it faster, right? Can you give them more opportunities as they go along? So this whole aspect of leveraging the power of youth to explore many economic opportunities, and not just economic opportunities, social opportunities that bring them dignity, right? One of my biggest lessons in Hedelda has been that, well, we keep saying, and I'm sure, ma'am, you'll see this in the work that you do, that it is not just a job, it is the social dignity that it provides. That's why the name we call is a head held high, that where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, right? And money is a byproduct of that. Yeah. So I think it gives all of us an opportunity for all sections of the society to really think, how do we bring the power of economic empowerment and social dignity? Right. And how do we amplify it through this blue dot revolution? Right. That is the thought that I have, and it can go in any number of directions that we will. Right. And I think that's the opportunity ahead of us.
No, excellent. So, and you spoke about, power of AI, youth, and entrepreneurial ability, yes. And of course, reimagining, and all of them put together. I think it really helps paint a wider canvas. Correct. Versus, in terms of the art of the possible. Correct. And the art of the possible can be in the social context, economic context. Exactly. So coming to economic context, Sriram, there's a question to you of course, if blue dots can power discovery through a variety of use cases to unlock India's demographic dividend, what does it mean from an economic sense, if you were to especially look at the markets and how the markets will look at it, and what does it do for them?
Sure, thanks, Gaurav. I think we talked about the concept. We talked about the need, ma'am. We talked about it. Madan eloquently talked about the concept of, four-legged stool and how you can put stuff on top of it. At the end of it, all of this have to drive the growth of the heart of India, which lives in its villages, or where nobody in this room is sitting and living on a day-to-day basis. And what we have realized when you're talking to many such clusters is that keep aside the emotional aspect of social dignity and, creating a generation of people who have come out of the shackles of whatever we want to call it, oppression. The basic fundamental is money in the pocket, right? How do you ensure money in the pocket for a person sitting at a very rural village in, say, some corner of India? We talked about discoverability, we talked about inclusivity, we talked about all of those things. But one more thing that we really need to think through, apart from blue and orange, is the kind of self-help groups and people that are sitting in villages who are typically not represented or underrepresented. What happens is, most of the time, their circle is very small in terms of the people who know about them, the people who want to discover them. While Blue Dot as a concept, we are talking of hyperlocal value discovery and not talking about fulfillment, we'll come to that later. There is also a merit in terms of looking at, not from the context of Blue Dot growing and a longitudinal life of a Blue Dot, but Blue Dot itself transmitting its signals beyond the district or beyond the hyperlocal area it was supposed to do. Some PWDs may find it difficult to move beyond a certain area, but there are certain other PWDs who are actually mobile as well. Now, how do we really figure that out across a certain geographical boundary? Will really unlock significant value that will perhaps not unlocked if it's a smaller geographical boundary. Number one. Number two, there is something that every single person in a rural household has to offer. And more often than not, it is kind of restricted because of multiple conditions, be it societal, be it geographical, or if I dare use the word caste-specific considerations or whatever, the multiple considerations. Now, people who want to consume those services are all not able to find that out and not able to democratically reach out to them in a digital manner. So what this Blue Dot thing would do is to not just discoverability from the position of a person who is giving, but discoverability from a position of a person who wants to consume. That discovery will significantly alter. And when the fulfillment part of that becomes a zero personal touch, I don't care who gives a Zomato packet at my home, right? And if that person is not able to speak also, but the moment he rings the or she rings the bell and gives me a food packet, I'm happy, right? So that will significantly change the entire dynamic. That's point number one. Point number two is, how do we really exponentially create a scale so that it can become self-sustaining? That creating of scale from self-sustaining, perhaps I would submit that we really need to move away from the fundamental aspect of Blue Dot, which is hyperlocal, to a larger, wider canvas so that the data that is getting captured can also start getting transmitted. So you're creating cohorts of insights coming from certain areas which can get transmitted, and then you can perhaps create a cluster, a food cluster, or perhaps a small cluster of weaving cluster or whatever in terms of what people are buying, or job cluster. So all of those things can spawn out. So what I am seeing as this whole Blue Dot conversation, we'll come to technology later, is not just a movement, but something that can really scale out and change the way the Indian rural economy can be uplifted and integrated to mainstream. That integration to mainstream is what will happen when this Blue Dot moves out of a hyper-local into a hyper-non-local, I don't know what the right word you want to use, into a larger, wider arena.
And no, thanks, Sriram, for sharing that, because what you're pointing out is that one can think of Blue Dot not just from the perspective of livelihoods and welfare, but also services, and services that people would like to consume, which are actually around them, but are digitally dark and hence cannot be figured out, right? So, and I know that a team of yours, which is working on calculating some economic impact, actually was telling me a number like, 1,000+ crores that can be added to an economy like Nagpur itself, if one were to take up diverse use cases of Blue Dots. That's also a possibility, right?
In fact, sorry, one other thing to add, and maybe Sriram, that's something that the team can look at as well. See if, from a $4 trillion economy, if you want to move towards a 30, 40, whatever $1 trillion economy in the next 25 years or 20 years, per capita has to grow almost like 10x, right? So is it possible for us to work backwards to say, if we have to achieve that because finally what matters is per capita, GDP per capita, right? So if we can work backwards to say, where is that 20 lakhs of additional value going to come from?
Right.
Right? And how does that get unlocked at every household level using this tech? If we can find that correlation and answer, then we can shape the tech to this.
No, absolutely.
No, a funny incident, right? I have certain food preferences. Now I live in an apartment complex which has got 500 houses. I need people who can serve me that food preferences when, when I need, for example. There's a small WhatsApp group that says, "Aaj dal chawal ban raha hai, aap chahiye to le lijiye." And then people who start like this suddenly grow, right? Now, this is happening in a place, in an apartment complex where people don't know the neighbor.
Right.
Think of what it will do in a village or in a town, in a small town. So that is what will unlock a significant value, discovery from both sides, right? And an ability to broadcast that I have certain thing to offer, and where that broadcast is reaching, nobody knows. But if it's captured digitally somewhere, and I have something very cool like a very simple app to consume that broadcast, then value unlock will happen significantly, right? So that is one part. The other part is also now, with whatever I'm reading about, ma'am, a significant amount of neurodiversity is also getting added into the workforce, right? And some of this blue-collar economy and whatever we are trying to say, we can also tag some blue dots as some special skills or whatever, right? If we want somebody to do repetitive tasks again and again and again, people in certain area of the spectrum can do it much, much better. So it's perhaps an intersection between a blue and a purple. You have to invent a color so that you can really figure out what exactly that you can do.
That's what you're talking about. Rainbow has enough colors and to go after that. But I just wanted to now come back to you, Manmeet, which is, I think we all somewhere know that, something like this has power to unlock not just the demographic dividend, but also economy, also social capital, and so on and so forth. Now, if this were to be, let's say, to be done in the top 100 plus districts of the country to begin with, what do you think can be the role that the government can play to facilitate such a move? Because, of course, it's not something that only government should do, but the whole Sarkar, Samaj, Bazaar has to come together to do it. But what do you think can be the government's role in facilitating this?
So we all agree that discoverability or hyper-local discoverability, and then the ability to broadcast that that ability to whoever is willing to take on that talent or provide a service is a done thing. I think the role of the government is to create that like a digital public infrastructure stack, like it's done in the case of Aadhaar. It is shown in the case of UPI, which is okay, and we are also exporting that kind of technological intent and learnings to other neighboring countries in the global south. So provide that open infrastructure, but it is standardized. It is reliable, because that's where the government will come in to tell both ends of the spectrum, the people who need to be discovered and are discovered, and to people who are willing to be providing that service, that this is a reliable and a standardized method, and you can trust it. I think that's where the most important role of the government would come in. And I think when we worked with Ek Step and did that pilot project in Patna and in Haridwar, we did realize that there were a lot of people who were willing to provide service or provide donations or CSRs. But they kept coming back to our foot soldiers to tell them, हमें पता ही नहीं है किसको देना है. So there is a lot of people who are waiting to be discovered, and there are a larger number of people who are waiting to give, provide. It could be cash, it could be services, it could be aids, it could be any kind of thing. But that matchmaking, if it is done on a government open, reliable public infrastructure, that would lead to a game change. And I also want to add a question relating to one of the comments said that the moment we stop looking at discoverability of finding that bichara PWD or rural poor living in 70% of our poor living in our villages, we need to stop looking at all of this from welfare economics, move it more into inclusion economics. Trust me, 200 million population is what WHO thinks, that also conservatively, are the PWD population in my country. The census talked about 26.8 something. We far know that they are much more because the number of neurodivergent cases, people accept them to be having that so-called disability is also invisible. They've kept it hidden. Now, this is a large economy. So the commercial sense of providing services for them is what we should project instead of being a welfare-based medical model of inclusion. That's what I want to stress on.
I have one submission on the role of government.
Yes, please.
Having spent a lot of years advising governments, is that somewhere when we are trying to scale out these kind of initiatives, there are pockets of excellence. Ghaziabad is a pocket of excellence, Dharwad is a pocket of excellence. Taking the pocket of excellence into a scalable model, governing and orchestrating, that is perhaps a role that only government can do. How much ever private sector wants to do, governing, orchestrating, then at later point in time, certain legal aspects will come in, policy interventions have to come into picture. All of that, there has to be some kind of a government intervention to really scale this out. And that, while the IT part of a digital public infrastructure is something that can be created by a technocrat easily, this governance of the DPI and scaling out from pockets of excellence into a wider scale out is a critical role that, in my submission, government should also play.
I completely agree.
Right. In fact, our time is not up. This is what I've been told. It's not up. I've been told we can continue for a little bit more. Sorry, we see the screen which says time up, which you may not be seeing, but I've just told we can continue for a bit. Manmeji, very well articulated in terms of, this government can play the role of enabling digital public infrastructure rails for everyone to play upon. And I think, Sriram, you were adding to that, not just the technology aspect, but also maybe envisioning aspect, seeing how the ecosystem can play together. In that context, what are the guidelines, rules of the game, etc., etc. So I think that's very, very important. So actually wanted to take that question to both of you, Madan and Sriram, as stakeholders of both Samaj and Bazaar, in a way. If that were to happen, how do you envision that something like this getting implemented in 100 plus districts of India, what do you think will change as a result of something like this?
There's a slightly different view that I'll take to what Sriram is saying.
And being his roommate, of course,
No, the point is, I think it is a jugalbandi. It is, as you said, the orchestration, and in a jugalbandi or an orchestra, everybody has to come together. Where I'm also coming from is, and that's the, we've all a part of this, at the India AI Summit, we've kind of brought together a collaborative called Jan AI, saying what India needs is not just more of Gen AI, but Jan AI, that how do you take AI to the masses? Our learning has been that unless and until the people at the ground feel comfortable, feel that this is useful to me, and feel that I can trust this, and if something goes wrong, somebody is there for me. If that is not happen, then the whole Antyodaya Sarvodaya concept will not happen, right? Even in UPI, I've actually stood outside thousands of rural stores through the teams and understood why are people not using it. And the biggest challenge, they said, if I have paid 30 rupees to somebody, if it doesn't go, he says it's not come, I said it's gone, who's resolving this for me? And I don't want to, there's no call center.
Resolve that friction, have a speaker box, which was an important
So I think especially as AI takes shape into the grassroots, how do we create structures together that brings that use case specifically tailored for them, brings the comfort and the trust to say that, listen, I can use this without fear. And that has to be very focusedly done. Else, we can all sit here and say, I have the best of solutions, I do that, this, but finally at the ground, if it's not going and getting used and the economic benefits are not accruing,
right,
then there's no use, right? So I think especially a moment like this requires more in-depth conversation of the Samaj Bazaar Sarkar to come together to figure out how do we design the systems. In fact, I met somebody who runs the British government apparently has a behavioral nudge team that weighs in on every policy decision that the British government takes and say what are the behavioral nudges that are required to make this happen. How do we design that into the system itself?
Excellent.
Right? Especially in the world of AI and new tech coming in, we need more than ever these behavioral nudges to play. I mean, Swachh Bharat mission was such a wonderful behavioral nudge.
Yeah.
Right? So what can we learn from lessons like that? Or the pulse polio eradication program that was done by Rotary was a large movement. Incredible India, absolutely. So I think it requires us to think from that angle for a faster adoption.
No, absolutely, well said. In fact, just wanted to point out that also, when we talk about any large-scale transformation, transformation is about change in the lives of people.
Yeah.
Change is the hardest thing, and what we are expected to change is our behavior.
Correct.
Right? So hence, figuring out how we reduce frictions and create value, both in economic and social terms for people, becomes very, very important as that happens. Yeah, Sriram.
So where do I imagine this getting to, right? So let's go back, step back a bit, right? When Facebook came in, I didn't have a Facebook ID. Then somebody said you should get into Facebook and create an ID. I said, why should I do it? I said, you'll know all your classmates. You'll be able to talk to them. So it kind of fulfilled an unfulfilled need of getting to know long-lost friends and telling that maybe pahunch gaya, tum bhi pahunch gaya life mein. So let's talk about it. Then that was not sufficient. Then Insta came, right? Then it became more and more talking about this is what is happening in my life today, right? Then Snapchat came. It's not happening in life today, it's happening now. So there is a need to broadcast and get that self-validation, ma'am. Yeah, absolutely. That's the right word, right? And then others also felt the need. Then it kind of reached a critical mass and it grew. Now, what I would see in this is, in a future world, assuming, all the frictions are eliminated, through government orchestration or a Jugalbandi orchestration, whatever it is, this has the potential to not only discover and fulfill, but also start integrating value exchange. Right? Currently we are looking at discoverability and fulfillment of skills versus jobs. Now tomorrow, you add a training center into it. Then there is exchange of money. You add a scholarship providing CSR initiative. Then there is exchange consideration of who to do, what to do. Then slowly you start building the profile of Blue Dot. Blue Dot will get multiple flavors, right? Now this is how do you make it trustable? Then the fact that I have worked, I'm a ITI pass out, I'm a welder, I have a physical disability of XYZ, and I've worked with this MSME for 2 years. Like somebody said, my interest is to move out of the village into a town, into a metro, and then earn, say, 50,000 a month. The fact that this person has had the skill, verifiability of that, the longitudinal trust around that whole thing, can we start embedding into Blue Dot? So when these things slowly start happening, this whole Blue Dot has the ability to become a value exchange, a discovery, perhaps a Monster or a LinkedIn of the future. It could also become an Amazon of the future. It could become an urban company of the future. All of this is possible, but the key question that remains is, how do we show the first few examples that are really successful? And as a country, sorry for saying this, my personal opinion, not Deloitte's, we are very poor in tom-tomming our successes. Saying that, we have done this really well, this works, so please others emulate us. So how do we take the best examples of a Ghaziabad or a Dharwad and really get it into a mainstream conversation, right? And if there are 10,000 PWD in Ghaziabad who have got employed with this, how do we run a campaign so that, 5 other districts would want to pick that up? So all of those things have to come together to really imagine the future that we have. Friction is not just in technology. Friction is across adaptability and adoptability both.
Yeah. No, that's very well articulated, Sriram, because I think you're just not just talking about the fact that technology is one aspect, but behavior. And in that context, what are the different use cases of this, right? Which is, because as an individual, I have different aspirations, different needs. How does the Blue Dot continue with me in that journey, evolve in that journey, become something which I can use for many, many different types of exchanges that I need to do in the context of my needs and aspirations. That's a very, very powerful way of looking at it. Now, coming to diverse use cases, final question, just like 30-second kind of a response. If you were to really see a use case expand and become big in the country in this year, 2026, what would be your choice? Please can give your reaction.
First, because again, I will speak again from the point of view of persons with disabilities. My use case would be to unlock that potential that they have waiting there to be discovered, that they are an individual who have the power to economically give to the GDP of the country. They are an commercial base, a marketplace which has not been discovered. We need people to provide both goods and services to them, and that their participation becomes a matter of default, not a matter of programs like Purple Dots to discover them. It should become default. And all this in the entire envelope of inclusivity at the basic design from birth till the end of the cycle. Thank you.
Well, beautiful. Sriram, Madan?
I think I touched upon it. I didn't delve into it. It's all about hyperlocal value discovery. The killer use case for me would be local self-governance, right? And there you don't need significant governance because there are enough panchayats and all of those who are governing. So how can we really get this local economy blooming through the SHG? Why I'm using the word SHG again is, one, there are certain people who are skilled, who get formal education. They go to ITI, they go to 10th, 12th, etc. There is a bunch of people who are denied even that. In some villages where people cannot go for education, how do we bring them into mainstream? SHG is the key place. Thank you.
One word, MSMEs. How do we unlock the power of MSMEs? I think this is ripe for disruption.
Excellent. I'll pray to God tonight that all your use cases come true during this year. Thank you so much to all of you for being present here. And once again, apologies for the delayed start, but I hope you enjoyed the conversation and had some good takeaways. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Look forward to working. Thank you.
And economic growth. While we'll have the panel coming in a few minutes, I, as your moderator today, so I'm Nidhi Bhasin, and I'm the CEO of Digital Green in India, and we work with basically smallholder farmers and AI. We basically have today partners who will talk about how smallholder farmers who sit at the center of the global food system and how digital public infrastructure, DPI, really provides a building block to enable AI-powered advisory tools for farmers to help them manage risks, access information, and participate in markets. We will show how India is using the whole DPI infrastructure to ensure that the farmer benefits and gets impact from here, and also how the overall South-South collaboration can come together, especially in countries like Ethiopia. Before we really have a bigger discussion out here, I would like to invite Sanjay Jain out on the stage. Sanjay is the Director of Digital Public Infrastructure for Gates Foundation. And before he actually comes on the stage, I think this is also an amazing moment in India for us to talk about DPIs, especially as in the latest budget, the FM has spoken about and also have included resources for AgriStack and Bharat Vistar. We'll learn more about it today. We'll talk more about it today. But I'll just hand over the mic to Sanjay Jain to deliver the keynote. Thank you.
Thanks, Nidhi. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you everyone for being here for this very important conversation. The number of people living in extreme poverty has fallen by 2/3. Today, however, the resources to help continue that progress are being abruptly cut back, with countries slashing more than $30 billion in aid over the last year alone. In a future of more limited resources, we have to harness new technologies such as DPI and AI to help countries do more with less. As we know, many smallholder farmers, particularly women, have long been disconnected from information about things like best practices, resilient seed varieties, market information, not to mention up-to-date information on weather, pest, and disease risks. Countries like India have been leading the way by building digital public infrastructure that's needed to enable better advisory services, as well as to access services like finance, subsidies, insurance, and other tools to help increase productivities and income. We have seen states in India deploy digital services for farmers like Krishi Samriddhi in Odisha, reaching 7 million farmers at a cost of less than 18 cents per farmer per year, to improve farmers' income, especially during climate shocks. Nidhi mentioned that the role of the Government of India. See, the Government of India has designed and invested in AgriStack to help develop national farmer registries, crop registries, and plot registries. Building on this and utilizing AgriStack as the foundation, AI solutions can be delivered to farmers via the Vistar platform, which synthesizes content from many sources into a consumable product for farmers. Both these innovations, AgriStack and Vistar, were recently announced as part of the 2026 budget, and resources are allocated to them. Ethiopia is another country that we can look to see how these technologies are being deployed. Ethiopia's digital ID system, FIDA, allows a farmer to register, geotag her land, and use AI-enabled tools to get information in the language she speaks, tailored to the soil and weather patterns she experiences, so that she can boost her yields and grow a greater variety of more resilient crops. She can then see fair market prices for these crops and sell directly to buyers using Ethiopia's e-payments app called FIDA Pass, a direct economic benefit to them. To impact those who need them most and make them secure and sustainable, DPI systems must be designed for the public good, led by nations themselves, and grounded in the trust of the people who use them. As nations invest in digitization, many partners have come forward offering to help countries build digital tools. But we have seen that in some of these cases, these tools aren't as effective as countries hope, either because they're designed to extract a significant profit, or because they're designed for a specific use case and don't integrate with other key digital services. So just to take a step back, we want to define DPI so that it can be powerfully integrated and sustainable. At the Gates Foundation, we are aligning with the World Bank's definition on DPI, which establishes DPI as foundational, reusable digital building blocks, such as digital payments, identity, and data sharing, designed for the public benefit. The foundation is also investing in tools like MOSIP that combine the best ideas from DPI deployments around the world into open source platforms which countries can adapt and customize to meet their unique needs. The countries who do have this foundational infrastructure in place will have extraordinary possibilities at their fingertips to build next generation tools and services that can transform societies. This is only possible if they focus on developing them for the people who need them most. In our panel here today, we'll dive into some of the particular examples. We'll discuss the usefulness and impact that can come from strong DPI agriculture advisory services for smallholder farmers. Our panelists each play a critical role in bringing together the infrastructure, policies, and partnerships needed to bring the vision I opened with. The vision we're providing timely, accurate, context-specific extension advice to smallholder farmers in their local languages is feasible, scalable, and has the potential to impact livelihoods. This is going to be one of the biggest engines of the Global South. In closing, these days people tend to talk about how the challenges facing the world have never been greater. But the truth is, neither have the opportunities. As long as there's trust in the system, trust underpins adoption and scale. Trust in data, institutions, models, and governance arrangements is shaped as much by transparency, consistency, and accountability as by technical performance. This is the power of DPI in agriculture. Let's open it up to hear from our panelists about their work to accelerate impact where it is needed most. Thank you, and back to you, Nidhi.
Thank you, Sanjay. And may I request you to please, stay on the stage, and I'll invite the other panelists too. Sorry, everyone. So we're still waiting for one of our panelists, Jagdish Babu. But while we're waiting for him, let me please invite, our other two panelists on the stage. Fatima Almula, please, on the stage. Thank you. And Niriksha Shetty. She's the CEO of PXD. Thank you. Thank you, Sanjay, and thank you, Nirisha and Fatima. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah, great. Thank you, Sanjay. That was a very, very convincing and a motivating keynote. I think it puts the right context for us to take this conversation forward. But before I take it forward, I would also once again like to introduce both of you. So Fatima is from the UA Presidential Course. Thank you for being here. And Pratiksha Shetty is the CEO of PXD. While we'll wait for Jagdish, I'll introduce him when he comes in. I think he's stuck in one of the queues outside. But Sanjay, coming to you, I think, I know you have spent last 7-8 minutes and you must be a little exhausted, but I would still want to pick up the context from how you spoke about and you gave the example of Ethiopia also. From a point of view of, how do you really see, viable business and incentive models for sustaining AI advisory and DPI investments, particularly in public-private partnerships or hybrid delivery arrangements? What models have shown promise and where they have failed and why they have failed? It would be great if you can share some examples with us.
Can you hear me? Thanks for that, Nidhi. So I think one of the points that we wanted to first sort of focus a little bit on the sustainability aspect of some of these services where we are looking at these models. So broadly, what we have seen around the world is that when countries, the default way of building software and systems has been that you build for each application separately. And it's only when you sort of start to take a consistent view that you want to build a common ID system, like in India, you have one ID that is used for all services. Similarly, around the world, when you sort of say that each department should not build its own ID system, its own payments, its own data exchange layers, that's only when you actually start to look at building a DPI way of building systems. And that then makes it more sustainable. And when you don't do that, you see the failures happen. So for example, if you see not an agriculture-specific use case, but for example, I think in Nigeria, you've got about 13 different ID systems. And each of them is sort of run independently, and that's a big cost. And so, on the other hand, if like in India, we see Aadhaar, in Ethiopia, we see FIDA. These are examples where you are able to build a single system which can then deliver these benefits across the entire ecosystem. And so that is sort of the counter example to the one that you described, right, about failure. So, which is really what I would say is that you need to have a very coherent approach to do that.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, a little bit on that, building a single system, I think when JB comes in, Jagdish comes in, he's going to touch upon that. But, moving forward, I also wanted to, share with everyone that we are trying to structure this conversation, actually trying to cover 3 main points. One is around basically how DPI enables AI in agriculture, something that you're already talking about, Sanjay, you're already talking about. And secondly, we will, after addressing this point, we will come to how AI-powered advisory systems are supporting farmer decisions making in practice. And last but not the least, the most important, we are going to touch upon inclusion. How do we ensure that tools reach the farmers who need them the most? So that's how we're going to structure the rest of the conversation. But, picking up from what Sanjay said, Fatima, if I could come to you, we know that UAE is really investing a lot on the overall AI systems, right, and the AI capacity. How are you thinking about partnering with countries that may not have that kind of AI capacity? And how do you see the real case for collaborations out here? Just press the button. Yeah.
It's not turning on. Yeah. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me here today. First of all, I want to acknowledge the Indian government and say thank you. What an incredible AI summit. Really, we're so blown away by the scale of this AI summit, and to have it in the region is really amazing. And thank you to the Gates Foundation as well for putting this for this session together. I think it's a very timely conversation to be having. India has really established itself as a leader when it comes to digitalization infrastructure. We can see that with the efforts that have been built in the AgriStack and Vistar, and it's really amazing to see that that has the potential to really become the backbone of agriculture. So congrats on India for leading on that. The UAE is also, as you mentioned, Nidhi, we're also investing a lot when it comes to AI and really leveraging digital technologies in order to advance our own development as a country. And one of the things that we're also doing is really championing AI in agriculture as well. So in December, we launched Abu Dhabi's AI ecosystem for global agricultural development. And this ecosystem aims to do exactly just that, is to support countries and institutions across the value chain of agriculture to be able to develop AI products as public goods and then scale them at large. 2 key initiatives that came out of this ecosystem. Number one was the CGIAR AI Hub, where we're working very closely with them to translate AI data into public goods. And the second thing that we launched in partnership with the Gates Foundation is the Institute for Agriculture and AI, which is a dedicated institute that aims to pipeline all development of AI products within this institution. And it's going to be part of the Mohammed bin Zayed University of AI, which is one of the best universities of AI in the world right now. And this institute, specifically to answer your question, will do a couple of things. Number one, it aims to mobilize large-scale corpus, so bringing together international organizations, multilateral banks, private sectors, academia, to house agricultural data. The second thing that it aims to do is to mobilize compute power in order to train and to host models to be able to support countries to develop these products. Thirdly, it will tailor these models through technical assistance depending on language, location, culture, and so on. And of course, the last thing that it will aim to do is also be able to provide training to different countries so that countries can have full ownership of these public goods.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Fatima. I think we all can see that really some of the countries who don't have that kind of infrastructure, how will all these countries really benefit from there? But, I have a follow-up question for you out there. What are the concrete steps required with governments to establish AI advisory systems that inform farmer decision-making? And what does it really take to go from pilot to scale?
So can you repeat the first question, please?
So what are the concrete steps required with government? So what does the government really need to do to establish AI advisory systems that inform farmer decision-making?
So one of the things that I think is very important for governments to do is, first of all, to take ownership and to champion in order to support farmers and to build ecosystems such as the one that we launched, so that there are steps throughout that are supporting governments in order to develop these products that can eventually reach the farmers. So when we launched the AI ecosystem for global agriculture development, the value chain it covers is everything from concept, developing as a concept, AI research, agriculture AI research, and then the actual product development of the public good, and eventual large-scale scaling. Once you're able to institutionalize all of these different areas, you're able to create a pathway to develop these products, and then eventually, and also while you're simultaneously working with the several countries for them to be involved in the decision-making as well, and to be able to tailor it to the farmers. One of the things that we did, for example, is through this initiative, the AI Hub, we've launched the Agriculture Large Language Model, which is one of the first large language models fine-tuned for agriculture and provided as a public good. And we did this in partnership with Digital Green, who was a main partner, the CGIAR, the World Bank, the Gates Foundation, Embrapa, Bayer. So we're bringing in not just governments and institutions, but also private sectors to be able to contribute this and to be able to fine-tune it specifically for agriculture and for farmers.
Okay, great. I think that's definitely also addressing the need of the hour to strengthen the whole advisory system. Nirisha, I have many questions for you, but I actually ideally wanted it to be a follow-up questions of Jagdish's questions, so I'll still wait for 5 minutes, otherwise I'll come back to you. Sanjay, can I come back to you in the meantime? I think when we are talking about, reaching the last mile, also the scale, one of the biggest things which comes out is benchmarking, right? And, for what do you think for better benchmarking approaches that reflect real-world performance? Let's say contextual relevance, safety, trust, all of that put together, what is the evaluation landscape like? What are the gaps in the current benchmarking? Let's say example of AgriBench. And what public good do we need to keep up? So from a benchmarking evaluation point of view, what are the benchmarking tools? How do you think we need to address what is happening in this whole system?
Actually, the value of benchmarks is manifold. Of course, it helps for people to be able to evaluate those systems, but also sets up a standard against which people can compare with each other. It also sets up a competition landscape so that people are then competing to actually build to compete with others on the same benchmark. So I'm actually not completely on board with the AgriBench effort, so I don't want to specifically answer that, but we have seen that in general, broadly, benchmarks serve as a very important public measure that allow coordination across different actors to then be able to deliver services to the end user. And so with that in mind, I do think that's an important effort, but the second part of benchmarking is it has to continuously evolve. So once you actually have a benchmark out there, then you have people start to meet it, then you have to actually keep on evolving because users need keep changing, and also their ability to distinguish between the different parties who are supporting them in the field also keep changing. So that is a constant effort. So benchmarking is not a one-time effort, but something that has to be done on a continuous basis.
Yeah, thank you. I think even we are at Digital Green, I think we are a part of putting that effort towards benchmarking, because we all realize and understand that as we are creating these solutions, benchmarking becomes a very, very important to have standardized evaluation systems. Riksha, let me just, I think, come to you right now. And, PXT really works and supports with the government in helping them to create, the AI advisory systems. And, if you really accept the hypothesis that reusable templates and blueprints are the way forward and everybody doesn't need to really build from scratch, what should the government prioritize? What should they not prioritize? And how do you make sure that, systems reach scale?
Thanks, Nidhi. I wish JB was here to talk about the reusable blueprints, because that flows really nicely in here. But I think, we've been working with the Ministry of Agriculture and several other governments on scaling DPI systems like Bharat Vistar. And from that, three reflections on what I think governments should prioritize as you think about actually getting to scale. One is sort of riffing off what Fatima said, institutional ownership and mandate. So focus on governance, focus on who takes accountability when things go wrong, making sure things are resourced in the long term, both in terms of people, but also in terms of budget, so that these programs, you don't set them up and then they just wither away and die out. So there's that constant innovation, constant learning. So that's one. Second is continuing to invest in data pipelines and content pipelines. So as the research evolves, as the data gets better, making sure you have the investment in place to feed that into those systems. And then last, and I think this is the most important one, is making sure the feedback loops exist from farmers and from frontline workers. So you're not just measuring, downloads or how many people accessed a service, but you're meaningfully thinking about, did they engage with it? Did it actually create impact for the end user? And so as a consequence of that, I think the things I would say prioritize less is locking in on a particular model or a particular technology. These things are going to evolve at frenetic pace, and I think we need to design systems as most DPI is designed to sort of be interoperable, to switch in and switch out what's working better as the benchmarks improve and as they tell us what's working and what's not.
From there, Sanjay, if I can come back to you, and sorry to put you on a spot. This was a question I was planning to ask JB, but I thought maybe you would be the right person also to say that, especially in terms of what even Fatima spoke about in terms of the collaborations and partnerships, bringing from there to, how do you, there's always a confusion between how do you really distinguish between AI infrastructure and AI solution, and how does this all relate to the DPI? You're the DPI expert, so I thought maybe, let me just ask you this question. And, why does this matter when countries really decide to invest into something like this?
So thanks for that. The thing that DPI does is it allows you to go out at scale for the entire population. It effectively creates, something you'd call a system of record. So, you have the farmer registries, you have the transactions, you have those histories, you have those underlying systems, and on top of that, you have then the systems that establish identity, authenticate it, or create payments, subsidies, insurance, etc. All of these are essential for the farmer services to actually exist and work. The second, they're also essential to customize the advisory services for the farmer. So if you're a farmer and you call an advisory service, you're able to identify yourself, your plot of land, get the information that relates to the plot of land, maybe the soil health information or the historical, what has happened on that piece of land over the last few years, and then the weather that's relevant to you. So it basically allows the advisory service to be very much directed towards you. So this extreme personalization for everyone in the continent can only, or country, or whatever scale you're looking at, can only happen if you have the right DPI in place. So that's why we always say that DPI is essential for AI to be inclusive, because AI systems can only work if they have information about that particular user or that individual. And so for that reason, for AI to be inclusive, you actually need that underlying DPI layer first that then enables the personalization context to happen. And that is, and So that's really one of the key sort of separators. So AI and DPI have to work together for this.
So from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, a DPI layer is like a horizontal, and it's a must, right? It's a must. And on top of that, I think your other AI infrastructure needs to be built, or let's say solutions. Private players or government can come in and build the solution, and that's how each country should look at it, right?
Exactly. So yeah, you have this big horizontal which covers everyone, and then on top of it, you would have maybe different people or the government building solutions that then can work with the farmer or maybe with extension workers so that they can give the right advice to farmers. So there can be different targeted approaches that build on top of that.
Okay. Fatima, as we are sitting in India and we are talking about a lot of DPIs and AI advisory in India, but as UAE started talking about and investing into AI, is there something learning that you took from India? Is there something that you said, yes, this is working right, and let's use it and scale it up?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to learn from India. You guys are much more advanced when it comes to AI and scalability in agriculture. One example that I can give is one of our co-funded initiatives called Aim for Scale, which we co-fund with the Gates Foundation. It's really an initiative to drastically scale scientifically proven technologies in order to reach farmers. And we work closely with the Indian government. So one of our first innovation packages to come out of Aim for Scale is AI weather forecasting. And through this and through working with closely with the Indian government and through working also with PXD, we were able to reach 38 million farmers to provide better AI weather forecasting in preparation for the monsoon season. And that in itself was really an example of true success and working hand in hand with governments and with organizations such as PXD in India. The access that we were able to have, we would not be able to do that if we did not have such good partnerships. So I think that is one great example and one success story. And we do have a goal to reach 100 million farmers, hopefully by 2030.
Thank you. I think that would be really very motivating for a lot of stakeholders sitting in this auditorium today. I'll just make it an open question for both of you, Sanjay and Niraksha. That when I was introducing, I spoke about the finance minister, putting resources for Vistar. What do you think, and since both of you work very closely with the government, what do you think? Of course, I know Digital Green was also a part of this whole foundation of Vistar, but what do you think led to that success, and how do other governments or countries replicate that?
I think back to the first point I made, I think institutional mandate is critical. I think I have seen, from the early days when you guys were part of this, having champions for this within government that buy into the value of DPI, that commit to national scale, and that are willing to sort of put in the time and effort and resources that require bringing, both doing the actual work, but then also bringing the coalition of partners together, generating momentum for it within the government. I think that has been key. And we all work in government. There's a lot of shifting priorities. There's a lot of changes. I think what has been key to the success here is that continued championing of this initiative across different stakeholders within the Ministry of Agriculture.
Yeah, I think India's seen significant success with the DPI efforts over the last 15 years or so. And at some point, I think the question was, how do you think about all of the success that we have had and translate it to other domains? And so I think the confidence that came from that journey played off into it. But then the second thing is really the approach to say we need to solve this for the farmer. And the DPI approach sort of says we don't want to solve it for the farmer, we want to enable solutions for the farmer. And so that then leads to this idea of building a stack which has all of these elements on which multiple solutions can be built. That makes it actually quite extensible to provide for all of these services on top. And so I think having the confidence that the DPI approach works, having the mandate to do it, then also wanting to solve it for the farmer. I think the political value of doing it is very high. So I think there's very important that 60% of our country, which depends on agriculture, is taken care of and is not left behind. So I think all of that put together allowed for a very long effort to try out different approaches and to grow over time. It didn't happen overnight. I think it finally made it to the budget speech this year, but it's been many years in the making, and it's been many stakeholders, many people wanting to solve these problems and then taking it step by step to get us to this point. And, hats off to all those people who have been working on this space for so long just to get to this point. And I think we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
We're not done yet. But I think it's a very good validation that we have had successes on the path here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, definitely. And I think in India, with also now a couple of state governments taking it on, with the Mahavistar happening, this is definitely a movement forward. I did say earlier that the last part is going to be on inclusion, and I think a lot of us sitting in this room do have questions, and we are very, very conscious about what we are building, how this is inclusive. Riksha, touching about the on the interplay between languages and last mile delivery, is inclusion beyond language? When we think about reaching the last mile, the marginalized farmer, we need multi-channel approaches. So one is, of course, language, but we also need multi-channel approaches and a broader set of choices. What does effective, inclusive last mile delivery mean to you?
Thanks, Nidhi. I think when we design these solutions, so to speak, it's very easy to design for the average user or the most accessible user. And so I think the inclusion needs to be built in at the design stage. And so that's thinking about both what content feeds in, what language you use, but even how you reach farmers at scale. And so, for us, that often means you're designing with farmers, you're not designing for them. And, that means you're designing for their unique constraints, low literacy, low connectivity. There's a whole range of, folks that are very happy to use smartphones and are comfortable with technology, to people who live in places where there is no connectivity whatsoever. And I think any platform, any network approach needs to facilitate solutions that allow you to reach all those people. At scale, that of course looks partially like a multi-channel approach, but it also involves spending a lot of time trying to figure out what's the advice, is it actually solving the constraint, is it actionable, and constantly learning from farmer feedback, what's working and what's not. So the service improves at scale. It's not a static, we've built something and we scale it. We continue to learn from different user groups to ensure that this idea of inclusion continues to evolve as we meet different user needs at scale.
Yeah. I was going to actually say that, both of you, even Sanjay, I would really love both of you to talk about, how you look at inclusion, and especially how do you, as we are building everything that we are building, the infrastructure, how do you make sure that it covers diversity, it is inclusive in all ways? Yeah.
So I think my panelists have said it perfectly, but I do want to give an example of how we're talking about solving for the farmer and effective, inclusive last mile delivery through one of our projects, which was the AI weather forecasting and delivering the forecast to the farmers through SMS messaging. I tell this story often because on our side we built a great solution that could be provided to farmers. We worked closely with our partners with the Indian government. We worked closely with our partners at PXD to ensure the delivery and surveys. But when we actually went to visit the farmers to see for ourselves, we got very positive responses. But some farmers would say, yes, I received the information, and yes, I received the forecasting, but it didn't align with a religious holiday that I follow, which is when I know the rains come. So for me, as someone who can see that there are solutions, but then when I speak to a farmer and they give me this feedback, that is even more important than the technology and the solution itself. Because if they don't trust it, or they don't trust you or the information, then what's the point, right? So really building for the farmer and with the farmer is the most important part of all of it.
We also at Digital Green, as we are building a solution, this is feedback mechanism is a very integral part of what we do. Ensuring that it's not coming from what we think, but we are making it along with the farmers for the farmers. That's typically what we also do, right? Sanjay, over to you.
Yeah, no, I think inclusion as such, I mean, very valid points out here about how we have to build with the end users in mind, and not just with them in mind, but with them actually building out together the solution. And when you think of India's scale, I mean, we are 1.4 billion people, and even if you were to look at a solution that would go to 99% of the people, you're still leaving out many million people. And so with all of that thinking, you have to actually enable the creation of these solutions. So it's not really about building the final solution, but saying, how do I build a weather system which can then reach every farmer? And maybe the way to reach the farmer may be SMS, or maybe a smartphone, or maybe an extension worker, because there's no phone. And so how do you make sure that you build a layer that then allows a customization which is more at the edge, which is very different for each user? And all of this requires trust. I mean, trust is an extremely important element of inclusion. And because if you lose the trust of people, either because you're not aligning to their beliefs, or you're sort of, you give them advice and it proves wrong, then, all of those are places where you can actually go wrong. So and you have to make sure that you build that trust in, and a lot of it comes from making sure that you're taking the right advice from the right people, you have the right stakeholders. So having the government as a stakeholder is very important, but so is it important to get agriculture experts and to get weather experts into the mix and to build their solutions. It's not just about the technology, it's about all of this coming together. And so only then can you get to inclusion. But I think even then, it's always work in progress, right? I feel we still have a long way to go on that aspect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of course I can keep on asking questions, but one, I think the other day I was chatting with Jagdish JB, and I told him you all over, and he took me too seriously. I think decided that he should skip this one, but it could be the traffic outside. But before I summarize our discussion, any quick remarks that three of you have before I summarize it?
I guess the only thing I'll add to this entire conversation is, you can build the most perfect platform, the most perfect network, the most perfect technology. Trust takes time. And, to Fatima's point, as you're pushing newer information, things that might go against, knowledge people have held for years, both designing with them, but also, working over time to build that trust. You prove yourself right once, you communicate uncertainty adequately. There are different aspects that go into building trust, and I think that is going to be critical as we think about what it's going to take for, AI advisory services to go to scale.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that we are at a very critical time as AI is coming and growing very quickly. There's a lot of excitement, but we are very careful in terms of how we manage data and build models, and to make sure that we do it with the right partners. We build together to ensure that these public goods reach the people who need it the most.
Yeah. Welcome, JB.
We were just concluding and you're there in time.
Very sorry.
No, I was just telling the audience that I've been telling you that you're all over and you took me too seriously.
Oh my God.
I think, Sanjay, while you are giving your thoughts, I think you can just grab a sip of water, JB.
Yeah, so I think, we are at a very critical point, as mentioned, because, we've been working on this for a while, and AI is only growing in rapid, in terms of capabilities. And so it's actually a good time for us to see how we can use this increased capability to better our solutions, to maybe reach more people, and to be able to really improve, bring that the people who suffered for so long out of poverty. I think this is the right time. And so with that, I'm going to give it back to JB.
Yeah. JB, I had, so to introduce JB is the CEO of XTEP Foundation and has been a very integral part of how, DPIs are being involved and the whole Vistar story also. JB, I think because we are just running out of time right now, but I think your experience, your role has been a lot about building the DPI also. I think I asked Sanjay this question since you were not there, and I know you're very passionate about this whole thing about DPI versus solutions and all of that. So would you like to cover that point? And of course, I know there was a question that I had for you on languages, right, from an inclusion point of view. So, if probably in one answer, if you can sum it all, and yeah.
First of all, because of certain VIP movements, the whole roads got blocked, and I was happily participating in the panel online. So in some sense, what I see is that there are many organizations, institutions and organizations developing massive amount of data in a very accountable manner. If you think about DPI in a simple way as data on rails, right, where others can access, others can use, accountably, authoritatively. What AI does is to supercharge the whole idea. If you can actually bring data on rails and combine that with accountable and responsible AI, suddenly you are unlocking a lot of possibilities for population scale reforms. Think about a simple idea that an advisory sitting in a university becomes available at a fingertip to a farmer in context, in a very personalized manner, where you can combine the identity, the location, the context, the crop, and the season, weather data from weather systems, all of that together, and the schemes available for the farmer, and the status. For example, Amul recently launched a DPI powered by AI, where livestock identity is also part of the system. So when I say my cow is sick, I already know which cow it is. I already know the medicines the cow is taking. So when you combine all of these, what makes it possible is such an inclusive AI system. Think about technology systems in the past. They were all there, but you needed significant digital literacy and knowledge to be able to use them. With all due intentions, it was not very accessible. Today, the same systems, when combined with AI, supercharge inclusive access. So systems get reconfigured for a question. Previously, the interface was designing what kind of applications and workflows were there. Think about an AI app, any app. Workflow is decided by the developer and the person who is making the offer. Today, AI systems reconfigure itself for every question. So you have a million configurations possible with one interface. So this is a possibility. And now, with language work that India is leading for the last 4 or 5 years, one can supercharge with the local tongue of the farmer. Recently in Maharashtra, Bhili is a language spoken in the northern belts of Maharashtra. It took 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, to onboard the first data collection efforts to model building. Maharashtra will be launching it sometime here in one of the Maharashtra booths as well as in Maharashtra on 21st. Bhili person speaking in Bhili, getting answers in Bhili, on voice, all in 5 weeks. Right? This kind of possibility where systems come together in your local language is phenomenally supercharging. I'm very excited by that possibility.
JB, since, I've just been told we have less than 5 minutes, but in a minute, if you can just tell us that, you took the example from Maharashtra, and I know that in terms of, how things are getting implemented on Open AgriNet and Vistar, what's the difference between what's happening in Maharashtra and what's happening in Ethiopia?
Wow. So we kind of, Nidhi and her team in Digital Green has been part of Vistar for the last 3 years maybe, yeah. I think so, 3 years. Rikin has been a very passionate supporter. With Open AgriNet, we kind of brought together all the building blocks necessary. See, once I came here because somebody guided me to come in certain ways quickly. That means a path taken already. Open AgriNet made it possible for somebody to create a path, create a safe path, responsible path, and others can follow. So Bharat Vistar, Mahavistar, Amul, and Ethiopia all are bringing their institutions together. Ethiopia in Amharic language, Maharashtra in Marathi language, Amul in Gujarati, and Bharat Vistar is going to get launched tomorrow from Jaipur in Hindi and English, and available as a network to all states. Bihar is actually parallelly launching Bihar Krishi AI with Bharat Vistar. So you see the possibility of how when you connect a DPI to AI, DPIs can get interconnected and therefore data can flow on the same rails in a very interconnected manner. They are very similar, but different institutions coming together at a national level.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a way forward for all countries. You know what in the last 45 minutes, 50 minutes, what was basically, I think the word trust came up again and again out here, and you know, it's about, you can't create public value on its own. It is about, you know, getting basically how AI can help you to build more trust and how the systems are more interoperable. So that's one of the key things that I, you know, took away from all of you. And also the earlier conversation on how Sanjay was explaining, things has to be horizontal, right? And then build up on that. And then I think there has to be a little bit of, you know, while governments will build up the horizontal systems, how private players can build up your vertical systems or your other solutions out there. And also, you know, as we are doing things at scale, none of these solutions really are effective unless they are done at scale. It doesn't need to be linear. Basically, you know, good data standards and governance enable scale, while fragmented systems and weak processes create risk. So we have to make sure that there are the right kind of processes, the right kind of systems to ensure that there is, of course, the earlier point of trust and good governance out there. It has to be built on good governance system. Governance doesn't need to be an afterthought out here. And just finally, I think, you know, while I've... Sorry. Finally, you know, if I have to say that what are the key 4 points that we all discussed today, or what our takeaway would be, is, you know, basically start with public functions and not flashy use cases. We have to identify registries, eligibility systems, and advisory content that must work reliably before AI is introduced. So again, talking about the earlier point, build a strong base before the AI system is introduced. And I think that has been the success of some of the DPIs in India. And unbundle from delivery, right? So allow multiple public and private actors to innovate on top of shared governed data instead of locking governments into end-to-end platforms. So I think, again, it is a lot about the government basically building a platform and then others building on top of that. I think that is the way the scale will also come in. And the earlier thing on benchmarking evaluations, how that becomes extremely important to make sure that there is evidence-based scale up and not just scale up generally for it. And what I said earlier, your governance, your governance cannot be an afterthought, right? It has to be a part of your design principle. It has to be a part of how you plan in terms of building in your DPIs and your infrastructure. And with that, I think, yes, thank you to all of you. Last but not the least, what I said earlier, ensuring that whatever you build is an inclusive AI, right? We have to make sure that it's built on good governance, data, trust, and inclusive. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. And thank you, JB, for finally making it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think we have time for questions. Sorry. Yeah. No, we've been told that our time is up. Sorry about that. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, lovely. I'm sure you can catch hold of one of them later on and ask them the question. Yeah. Thank you. You made it.
Good. There are a lot of flowers.
A lot of flowers?
Yeah. Thank you very much, all of you, for putting up with my delay. I know, I passed the exam.
You have to thank them. They answered your questions.
I know. All of them are super trained on this.
Yeah, they answered your question. When I realized the question was finishing, it was only 20 minutes up. I said, now I have to ask them more questions.
Along with us, building on our models, these things just unlock incredible amount of potential. So I think just to wrap this up, for sure, we don't want intelligence to just be in evals and benchmarks. We want to make sure that it delivers for all of us, because that is when impact will start to happen. And we're already seeing it, but we want to do much more.
Sabina, you're the president and executive director of Just Jobs Network. Often we create solutions without understanding the problem. And my question to you is, could you, for our own kind of education, explain to us the sort of features of agriculture, energy, manufacturing, these sectors which are going to be impacted both by climate action as well as with AI. But first we need to understand the nature of that market, of the nature of the labor market in these sectors. Could you help us understand that first? Then we can see how the skilling story responds accordingly.
Thank you. Is this working? Yeah. Hello? No.
You might have to just switch it on. If it has a green light.
Yeah, got it. There we go. Not the most technologically savvy person, clearly. But thank you, Arnaba, for inviting me here today. Thanks to CEW and all of your colleagues for the great coordination. So let me just start by telling you a story the way I see it, the way Just Jobs Network sees it. We're a research organization that really focuses on action-oriented research, gathering data from the field to really understand how technology and climate change and the energy transition are affecting real people's lives, right? Our lives, all of our lives. And so let me tell you the story of two Indias, right? There's one India that is characterized by high levels of GDP growth, very low levels of unemployment, 3.1%, that's nothing. Anything below 5% is considered full employment. Berozgari to hai nahi. There's no real unemployment problem, right? We hear that. All of us are here today fascinated by the buzzwords of innovation and technology and entrepreneurship. How exciting all of that sounds. But then on the other hand, there's another reality that is also true. There's the reality of the phrase jobless growth, the fact that every unit of growth creates a very, very small, negligible number of jobs. So just you can have growth, but it doesn't translate into jobs. I see a lot of young people in this room. There are 370 million young people between the ages of 15 to 29 in India. Okay, that is more people just between the ages of 15 to 29 in India than the entire population of any industrialized country, United States, pick any industrialized country. We have more people just in the 15 to 29 age group, young people, right? And the unemployment rate for these young people is 3 times the total unemployment rate. But that's not even the problem. The reason our overall unemployment rate is only 3.1% is because most people don't have the luxury of being unemployed. They have to work in order to survive, in order to, make ends meet for their families. And so, and then you have this other backdrop where, yes, we do have innovation, we do have technology, we do have entrepreneurship, but there are not proper institutions to redistribute the gains from those to the broader population, right? So there's an accumulation of wealth, the rich are getting richer, and there's a large part of our population that is still struggling, right? We don't have the social protection systems in place to redistribute the wealth, and we certainly don't have the education and skills systems to be able to train and retrain. We've been hearing about skills development for a very, well over a decade now. And yet, if you look at the labor force survey, only 4.1% of respondents actually identify as having any formal skills, right? So I can go on and on about the problems with the education and the skills training systems. There's a glimmer of hope in the national education policy that has a vocational education component, but the 2 points, and then I'll stop. The pace and scale of the change that AI is bringing and the inevitable disruptions that it is bringing, we are not prepared for. And our institutions and our policies are not keeping pace with the scale and pace of AI and its development. And so most people are actually being left out of the kind of AI progress that you might be hearing in these halls today. So I offer that as my view. I offer that as a provocation, and happy to delve deeper.
Thanks for the reality check, Sabina. And that's a great point on which to turn to Dr. Claire Melamed, Vice President for AI and Digital Cooperation Strategy at the UN Foundation. Claire, this morning as well, in a different panel, we were talking about social protection that Sabina just referred to. But the scale of disruption that is coming, you've argued before that we need some kind of a global multilateral approach towards helping countries transition through this period of disruption. How do we do that?
Well, if I had a simple answer, we wouldn't have all needed to gather in these halls.
We are all here to listen to your simple answer.
But thank you. No, and I think this is absolutely. And it was great, Sabina, just to hear from you just now. I mean, I think this. I don't know whether by design or by accident, but this panel flows very, very neatly. I mean, I think. I always have those same alarm bells, as you mentioned, when we hear about the jobs transition and when we see the figures that make it look like it's a smooth transition. At the macro level, you see figures about, the way in which jobs are switching, the way in which skills are switching, and it's telling an exciting story about opportunities for the future. But I think what we often miss is that it's not always those same individuals who are transitioning out of one job and into another job, or out of one set of skills and into another set of skills. That these changes that we see at the macro level often represent, terrifying, vertiginous changes that affect individuals in their lives, and that they are often not well equipped for. Age comes into this too, of course. We tend to focus very much on young people, on the way that young people can take advantage of new opportunities. And with those figures about the level of unemployment among young people, it's obviously a huge issue. But, at the other end of people's working lives, if you're the 65-year-old worker who is made redundant as a result of technological change and AI, someone may step in to replace that job with a different job, but it probably won't be you. So I think, we need to think about the costs of transition as well as the benefits. We often focus very much on the benefit and the excitement, and that is something that needs to be planned for and realized, or else it won't happen. But I think we need to give as much thought to how we manage the costs of transition. All eras of big historical technical change have huge costs as well as benefits, even if they're relatively short term. And, everything tells us, political history, social history tells us that we need to think seriously about those costs, which kind of does come back, of course, to social protection, to other kinds of rules. So I think, just thinking about this at the global level, social protection schemes primarily tend to be administered at the national or even the local level. in alignment with local contexts and so on. I think that's incredibly important. But I think there are two issues that are worth talking about when we are thinking about what are the kind of global governance arrangements and global rules that can help countries, people, companies to manage these transitions. One, of course, is around the redistribution of wealth. You know, in previous eras of technological change, when we had primarily national economies, it was quite easy to say, let's redistribute the wealth from the winners to the losers, effectively, in this moment of change. Of course, that's much harder now if we consider tax as something which sits at the national boundaries, because the winners and the losers are often in different jurisdictions and different continents and very different parts of the world. So if part of the solution is some form of transfer from the winners to the losers, even in the short term, I think the institutions through which that's going to be done need to be thought about. At the moment, we don't really have the institutions to do that effectively. I don't know what they would be. The political obstacles, as we know, would be formidable. But I think that does need to be a part of change. A second response to transitions, not just technological or environmental transitions, but any kind of transitions which people always do, which is hugely difficult and controversial politically, not least in my country, is of course migration. You know, we can move money to where people are, or we can move people to where money is, or jobs. You know, we can move jobs to where people are, or people will move to where jobs are. And in an era of huge upheaval, of where the dimensions and of inequalities are shifting, that is always going to be something that people do, whether we like it or not. So I think often, you know, migration is another huge political debate that we talk about in very different contexts, but I think that has to be part of thinking about the global impact of this big change that we are seeing in our labour markets.
Well, it's interesting you brought up the migration issue, because the other aspect of migration is not just the demand pull of a more prosperous market, but the environmental push resulting from a changing climate, which takes us back to which are the most exposed sectors. I mean, Sabina, I want to turn it back to you. We've identified, as you know, at CW, we've identified the potential for 48 million new jobs that can be created across 36 new value chains in the green economy. But the first question we have to ask is, who's going to get impacted more first by the AI disruption as well as the climate disruption? Do you have a sense on that?
Sure. So I do think this is a really important conversation in the way that you're articulating it, Arnaba, because it's easy to say, okay, let's look at the impact of AI on jobs, but that's not the only thing that's acting on the labor market, right? There's also there's climate change. There's also the energy transition imperative. There's pandemics. There's trade shocks. There's so many factors, and at the end of the day, all of these forces are affecting you, right? So it's not just one force. We can't look at these different forces in silos, because the labor market, the group of workers, is just one. You're being affected by many things, right? And within that, Arnaba, I like to look at it, you know, rather than sectors, because there's a lot of conversation, a lot of research that talks about what are the next big sectors, right? We can talk about green jobs, or we can talk about, you know, whether we should invest in labor-intensive sectors that are more job-creating, or the service-led growth. At the end of the day, I think the fact of the matter is that people make decisions locally. And what we're not doing in the job conversation is having a very local conversation, right? What do your parents think about your jobs and where you might be able to go to? That's how people make decisions about jobs, not at the 10,000-foot level, what sectors are growing, right? So that's one thing. The second thing I want to say is look at this in a socioeconomic segmentation, right? So if you look at, you know, this pervasive narrative that developing countries will be less affected, right? You've all probably heard this. Oh, developing countries will be less affected than industrialized countries because so much of our economy is in the informal sector that is not going to be exposed to AI, right? That is just not right. Because if you think about it, we have more than 90% of employment is informal employment. One way of looking at that is 1 in 10 jobs is formal. And that's such a small number. So if there are disruptions, it's not affecting the overall economy. But let's flip that argument over, right? Let's flip that argument over. If that is the only number of formal, good quality jobs that we have, and those jobs are going to be disrupted. And dare I say that people in this room are part of the very large youth population that are going to be applying for those very small number of jobs that are going to become even less, right? That affects us directly. And so this idea that, and then there's multiplier effects, and then I'll stop. So it's if the IT sector in Bangalore were to lay off a lot of workers, all the bars and the restaurants and the eateries and they stop spending money, and then it has cascading effects across the other parts of the economy too, right? So we need to come down from the macro to the much more local story, and we need to think about this in very real, pragmatic terms about how this technology and the disruptions are going to cascade across the economy. Thanks.
So, Pragya, Sabina has in some ways, thrown us the challenge. And when you work closely with governments, what would be your advice in terms of helping governments manage this transition in a conscious and an intentional way, rather than what Sabina is highlighting is often we think that the problem is not large enough because we are simply not counting the problem in the right way. So what would be an appropriate way of managing this transition with minimal, we can't say no disruption. OpenAI Academy is also doing stuff. So can you reflect a little bit on what your approach and theory of change is?
Yeah, I think we're very clear that we're not the experts on this for sure. And I think we will have to work with, people like Sabina and Dr. Claire to, one, understand the problem, two, work with them to also find the solution, and then therefore together give an advice on what should the government be doing around these issues. I'm not trying to skirt the question. I'm just being, I think, very candid that, we have people within OpenAI. We have a chief economist, Dr. Ronnie Chatterjee, who we've got on board, who is actually thinking about this day in and day out. And we have a whole economic research function within the company, within the research lab, to actually think about, one, how is ChatGPT being used across the world? And then therefore, also what is the impact of jobs? And we did come out with a blueprint last year around this topic, where we had the chief economic advisor to the Prime Minister's office also come in and talk about his concerns around the job loss that might happen. And of course, I feel like the conversation has really shifted from last year, February, to obviously where we are today in February this year, because we can, to a very large degree, articulate at least what we have seen in the last 1 year, because now the technology is also evolving and in some way maturing. Earlier there was a very limited level of adoption. Now, of course, we're seeing a very high level of adoption, not only just within consumers, but also a lot around enterprises, like Nirmit was saying. And so we did do a report in collaboration with ICRIER, which we just launched actually over the weekend, and that clearly says, and we did go out and speak to or survey around 650 companies across India, because we wanted to root this conversation in facts. There was a lot of this, that, there's going to be a lot of job loss, and then there were a whole set of people saying there are going to be new jobs, so we're all okay. And so I think we really wanted to make sure that we're rooting this conversation in a little bit of survey which is localized and talks to what is happening in India, as opposed to a data set which is international and really doesn't speak to what's going on the ground. And what we've heard 650 companies tell us is that they are slowing down their hiring, but at the same time, overall growth of jobs within their companies is increasing. And of course, there's a lot of nuance in that fact and in that stat, and you can feel free to go out and read that report. But I think overall what we are hearing them say to us is that they are seeing a lot of their engineers and their overall employees, not just engineers, but people in finance, legal, HR, across functions, actually be a lot more efficient and productive with the adoption of AI. And so I think really our view on this is that you have to adopt and you have to start using this technology to be able to understand what that reskilling, upskilling looks like, because at least what we've seen is that the upskilling is much faster and much easier. And we are, of course, making and taking initiatives like the OpenAI Academy to be able to provide all of this content for free, so that today, if you're a teacher, you can go out and understand what are the best practices to not just use our models, but use AI in general. Plus, we're also doing similar stuff by launching certifications of OpenAI, which means the minute you take those courses, one, you know how to use AI more effectively, but also secondly, your employability increases significantly after you take that certification. So we want to be part of the solution, and therefore we want to be able to work with universities, with experts to figure out what's the right path. And we're doing a lot around diagnosing the problem as well with Ronnie and our team.
So again, both you, Pragya, and what Aditi presented earlier, we are clearly seeing there is a premium applied to whether you have the green skills or whether you have the AI skills. The question is, I think as Sabina was saying, and what you're also, I guess, attempting to do, bringing that down to a place-based conversation rather than just a macro conversation. So Nimrit, as an entrepreneur, what would you say are, I mean, if you had to give some kind of, green shoots of enthusiasm out to the policymakers, what would you say are India's core strengths in its skill base or in its kind of demographic base or otherwise, which we can present as here are some strengths that we could leverage through this transition and disruption?
So I'll use the word, I think so with AI and jobs, I'm cautiously optimistic. That's the word I would use. So of course we need to be cautious, but we also need to be optimistic. See, as humanity, we run on hope. And I can say that without having any agenda on either sides, because I also run the biggest human job network for 0 to 7 years, which is Youth of India. And on the same time, we also have Blue Machines AI, which is on the AI, agentic AI side. So I can be probably very, I would say, bipartisan in some shape and form as I talk about this. So at least my perspective on what we are seeing, and before Microsoft Excel came out, in some shape and form, there was like a whole building of people doing calculations and modeling. Once Microsoft Excel came out, all of this modeling work was done by Excel. These people got out from the repetitive task and started doing something creative. And in today's world, and I'm talking about AI today, and I really believe AGI is really far away. I think so. It's not going to be that humanity is going to get destroyed. It's far away. So in today's world, as I see, the jobs are getting unbundled in some shape and form. The repetition part of the jobs is going to go away. Humans are going to be more creative. For example, yesterday I was using one AI tool to build, I was with my marketing department, we were trying to build an advertisement. And in that advertisement, we were trying to say a guy is driving the car, but we had to specify the guy is driving the car, but the shoot angle has to be from this side, and then the car moves in this side. So all of the directorship or that creativity is still human. And I think so we humans are best at creativity, and that is what we do more, and we will start seeing that more jobs going in that direction. I will also see again there's going to be a very big rise if the two jobs if I'm going to bet on for future is FDE, forward deployment engineering, because a lot of times big organizations struggle on how do you go and apply AI. Like say it's a trucking business, they want to apply AI. If you don't understand trucking very well enough, you cannot apply AI there. So think about that, transitioning that job, I think so that will be very important. Evals is going to be a very, very big thing for India. I'm really, really looking forward to that. See, India is a very, very complex environment, multilingual, multi-sectoral. There are different cultures, and to ensure that AI works in that way. So we are seeing a lot of work happening in that direction, and where we have a frontier small lab at Apna, which is actually building those data sets which big model companies will use in future. So that will be, world models are coming up in future. I think so a lot of work is going to happen in there. We are also building data sets there. So as we see, a lot of this are new jobs that are getting created. So at least my perspective is, I don't think so if I am a graduate or I am, say, maybe 2 years into a job, I will not lose my job to AI, but I will lose my job to a person who uses AI. So at least my perspective is going to be there. Try and learn new skills. I don't think so we can be like an ostrich saying that AI is going to change the world. What do I do? I think so get the head up as a young person getting into professional world. See where you can apply AI, because see, AI can do a lot of mundane tasks, but nuances is what we humans are good at. Use your power of imagination, nuances, ask the right questions, use AI to then scale it to this, and will hopefully go to a world of extreme abundance. And I really hope that we go in that direction.
Let's stop at extreme abundance and turn to Claire, because we've had a diverse discussion on the micro issue that Sabina, Pragya, and Nirmit have identified. And there's a good story to tell, and there's a uncomfortable story to confront. But back to governance at a national level or a global level, political leaders might be aware of the micro, but have to articulate a macro. And that's where nuance gets lost. How do we balance this diversity of views when it comes to developing those guardrails, those cushions that you want some international cooperation on? What's the biggest risks we want to confront?
I mean, I think that the international conversation on AI is, as we all know and as we see here, very fragmented, and it's perhaps better to think of it as several conversations. There is a conversation about safety and the sort of existential risk element, which is different to this conversation about jobs. There are overlaps, but it's just a different conversation, and that's okay. Not everything has to be about everything. I mean, I think on this jobs question, as I say, I think there's two ways to look at it, and I can see that we have 1 minute left, so let me try to be as quick as I can. I think one is for governments to do the things they've always done, but just do them in a new context. You know, governments have always thought about employment. It's one of the main reasons why governments fall, is when there is high unemployment and governments are not meeting people's aspirations. So of course public policy is often very much dominated by questions of employment. That's going to be the same. It's just in this new context. Governments have always thought about skills. They've always thought about social protection. So I think there's a way in which the AI conversation is not new. It's just a reformulation of exactly the same public policy issues that have always dominated political debate, but with the new opportunities and risks. And therefore, I think a level of urgency that perhaps we haven't seen for a while. There are, of course, some specific things that governments can do, that they must do, that are responding specifically to the opportunities and the threats of AI, which are in the areas that we've discussed here: skills, social protection, all of those things. I would like to see, my last point, I do think there is a problem with leadership. I do think that although there are many governments who talk a lot about AI and it's a train that everybody wants to be on, I do think that we perhaps have seen a little bit less in the way of specific actions confronting the complexities. Everybody wants to be the person who shakes hands over the new data center in their country and things that look great. People are a bit less keen to talk about what the costs might be, and how they, as governments, have a responsibility for managing transitions. But finally, you know, governments do stuff because we as citizens make them do stuff, ultimately. You know, I think we can't pass the buck to companies any more than we can pass the buck to companies or to anybody else. If we want this to happen, ultimately it always comes back, you know, as the jobs question does, it always comes back to the individual and to what we want.
That's that focus on ultimately our individual responsibility is spot on. All sorts of sirens and bells are going off. I guess, I mean, that's a sign that we got to all wake up. I think what we've got from this panel, I'm really sorry that we don't have time for questions, but we've got from this panel is on one hand, the huge opportunity that exists in terms of the clean transition. We at CEW say, let's create clean markets that don't exist. I guess we now have to create clean labor markets that don't exist. And I think the data that Aditi shared, the tool that Weber, my colleague, shared, but also what Nirmit, you as an entrepreneur are trying to do, Pragya, you, what you're trying to do with your stakeholders, Sabina, you shining the spotlight on the uncomfortable things, and then Claire, you trying to take it up to the halls of the powers that be. I think it just demonstrates that this is not going to be solved by any single individual or stakeholder. It is a partnership, but that requires intentionality. We are here to partner with all of you, but all of you out there, good luck in retaining your jobs or getting a new one. Thank you. They want to give us a memento.